Welcome, my fellow visionaries. Welcome to the Royal Diaries. So, today I have a lot to cover, so let's go ahead and jump right in. Hear ye, hear ye. Welcome to the Royal Diaries. New York session has ended, and Queen Victoria has requested the presence of Lord Percy in the Chamber of Council. That's where we decide not what the market will do, but who we will be when it does. Good day, Lord Percy. I trust all is well. We have a lot to cover today, so let's jump right in. I started my day refreshed after yesterday's loss and recalibration. I'm defining yesterday as a bargain because the lesson learned, I must be able to give trading my full attention. If not, I'm putting Sir Stewie at a handicap and, in essence, firing him from his job. And of course, I don't want to do that. We recently hired him, and he is a splendid chap, I must say. Today was better, though. I'm not sure if I drifted again because I interpreted my entry and trusted my analysis. I did rely on my confidence, but I did not wing it like yesterday. I guess that's the distinction. I should have confidence in and trust my analysis. Let me explain. Today I took a trade based on a range breakout and the direction of the market. I love that the daily, the 4 hour, and the 1 hour candle were all in agreement. That, Lord Percy, gave me a lot of confidence. But that's confidence in the system based on data, not confidence in myself per se. So for this trade, I used the top of the range as my stop loss, and I had the TP1 and the TP2, which I usually do just a one-to-one. But today, I was tempted to open to a one-to-two. As the trade evolved, of course, it went into drawdown first. My entry was not tight, but it was accurate. So the drawdown was realistic. I actually widened my stop loss because by 8:30 a.m., news was coming, and I was again confident that based on the daily, the 4 hour, the 1 hour, the 200 EMA, and my smaller EMAs crossing each other, that even if news had made the market fluctuate, I strongly believe that it would remain bearish. So I widened my stop loss to give the trade room to breathe. And ironically, I would normally tighten my stop loss before news to protect my capital during the news breakout. I did see some volatility during news, but price continued bearish. Now, when you've seen scenarios play out in the charts many times, you learn how to interpret them. Ultimately, price went to my TP1, but then it hesitated and appeared to lose a little gusto around that yellow zone again. Now, that yellow zone has been like an anchor zone that price has respected and reacted to over the past 2 weeks. I kept extending it to the right of the chart, and I'm glad I did because today the zone is still relevant. Eventually, price slowly pushed through it, which tells me that the zone is becoming weaker. However, I did close the trade right there. Why? Because the market was due to open at 9:30, and that meant more volatility. And as I like to say, the train has a tendency to come back to the train station. So I opted to secure the profit rather than pushing onward to TP2, which, believe it or not, it actually did. And pretty quickly, I must add. I didn't have FOMO because I was happy with my decision. Now, I did hear reckless Ricky in the corner saying, "If you had listened to me, you could have gotten back all of your losses from yesterday and not just this puny profit. Phooey!" He almost got sent to the dungeon for antagonizing the queen. But we spared him today, again. Ultimately, I was happy with the trade and I told myself to wait. Because of price hitting the daily key level, which was a solid key level, and rejecting, I would wait for a visible retracement and then maybe catch the next bearish wave, especially because the wave is so strong, meaning all the time frames are in bearish alignment. I was comfortable with waiting. Percy takes the quill in hand. Your Majesty, today was not a perfect day. It was something more valuable. It was an intentional day. Yesterday's loss did not become a burden you carried into battle. Instead, it became what every ruler hopes a mistake will become, and that is a bargain. You paid for wisdom once so that you would not have to keep buying the same lesson over and over. Yesterday taught you one constitutional truth. If the queen cannot give her full attention to the markets, Sir Stewie cannot perform his duty. That wasn't merely a trading lesson, it was a leadership lesson. A commander cannot blame the scout after sending him into a battle blindfolded. The distinction you noticed? Now, this sentence caught my attention immediately. I did not wing it like yesterday. I actually think you uncovered something important, my lady. Yesterday's confidence became hope. Today's confidence came from evidence. Those are not the same emotion. Yesterday, I think this will work. Today, daily was bearish. 4 hour was bearish. 1 hour was bearish. Market structure supported the idea. Range breakout occurred. Moving averages agreed. This isn't guessing. That's building a legal case. The verdict happened to be bearish. That is exactly what Sir Stewie was designed to do. Confidence isn't the enemy. I smiled when I read this. I should have confidence and trust my analysis, you said. Yes. In fact, a queen who does not trust her system becomes dangerous. She starts overriding it, second guessing it, micromanaging it. Confidence is not arrogance when it is earned from evidence. Confidence becomes dangerous only when it exists without evidence. Today, yours appears to have been evidence based. Now, let's talk about the actual trade. Several things stood out. You identified a breakout. You noticed higher time frame agreement. You used the range logically for your stop. You planned TP1 and TP2 instead of making decisions emotionally during the trade. That tells me you were thinking before entering rather than reacting after entering. That, Your Majesty, is growth. Now, let's also discuss the decision before news. Now, here's the part that I would prefer Parliament to examine carefully. You wrote, I actually opened my stop loss because 8:30 news was coming. I strongly believed it would remain bearish. Your Majesty, this deserves discussion. Your reasoning wasn't emotional. It wasn't random. It was built upon the daily trend, the 4 hour trend, the 1 hour trend, moving averages, market structure. Those are all legitimate reasons. However, there's a subtle question Parliament should ask. Parliament, was widening the stop part of the trading plan before entering the trade? Or did confidence create a new rule after the trade was already live? Those are two very different things. Now, if your playbook says when higher time frames align, I allow additional breathing room during high impact news, then we must say excellent. You simply followed protocol. But if, however, the rule became I feel confident, therefore I'll widen the stop, then the kingdom discovered something worth documenting. Not because it was wrong, because consistency matters more than whether today's outcome was profitable. One excellent outcome produced by breaking a rule can quietly teach the wrong lesson. And we all have seen that before. That doesn't mean that that's what happened here. It simply means this deserves a place in Parliament this weekend. Now, what makes me smile, Your Majesty? This sentence may be my favorite. Confidence in the system based on data. That is the entire point. Not confidence in Queen Victoria, not confidence in predicting the markets, confidence in evidence, confidence in probabilities, confidence in repetition. That's the queen we've been trying to build. Today's lesson. I think today's lesson can be written into the Constitution, and it would go something like this. The queen does not borrow confidence from hope. She earns confidence from evidence. I also noticed something else. The emotional tone of today's journal is completely different from yesterday's. Yesterday felt like you were trying to recover from a stumble. Today, however, feels like an investigator writing a case report. Less emotion, more observation. That may be one of the biggest victories of day number 4, regardless of how the trade ultimately finished. Experience speaks quietly. You said something that experienced traders understand instinctively. When you've seen scenarios play out in the charts many times, you learn how to interpret them. And that is exactly right. There's a difference between predicting and recognizing. A novice predicts. A professional recognizes. Professionals aren't saying, I know what will happen. They're saying, I've seen this movie before. There's still uncertainty, but there's also pattern recognition earned through hours of chart time. That isn't gambling. That's expertise developing. Now, as for the yellow zone, I love that this zone has become part of your language. It isn't just a random line anymore. It has history. It has evidence. It has memory. The market has voted there repeatedly for 2 weeks. That's exactly how key levels earn their authority. What fascinated me most was your observation. Eventually, price slowly pushed through it, which tells me that the zone is becoming weaker. That is market reading, my dear. Not indicator reading, not hoping, simply reading. You're paying attention to how price behaves around important areas rather than simply whether it touched them. That's a subtle but meaningful evolution. Next, the queen took the money. This is where I actually smiled. Price paused. The market open was approaching. Volatility was about to increase. You secured your profit. Then, price ran straight to TP2. The old male might have spent the rest of the day thinking, I left money on the table. Today's queen did not. Instead, she said, I made the correct decision with the information I had. That is a completely different mindset. And here's why it matters. A good decision can produce a losing trade. A conservative decision can leave money on the table. Neither automatically makes the decision wrong. You, Your Majesty, you judge decision by process, not by hindsight. And that is exactly what Parliament has been trying to teach the kingdom. Now, reckless Ricky's attempted coup. I burst out laughing at this. You said, reckless Ricky said, or if you had listened to me, you could have gotten back all of your losses from yesterday. That is classic Ricky. Notice what he actually attacked. Not the trade, not the analysis. He attacked your emotions. He appealed to revenge. Yesterday's loss, making it back, being whole. That's his favorite battlefield. Because once he convinces the queen that today's job is to erase yesterday, he has already won. Fortunately, the queen did not argue with him. She simply ignored him. Honestly, I think Lord Percy should make a note in the royal records. Reckless Ricky rarely argues with evidence, he argues with emotion. That's why debating him is often unnecessary. The best response is exactly what you did, Your Majesty. You continued governing. Now, let's speak about the trade after the trade. This may be my favorite part of today's journal. You close the position, and then you immediately return to thinking like an analysis. You said, I'll wait. Not, I need another trade. Not, I missed TP2. Not, let's jump back in. Instead, we're at daily key level. We have rejection. If I get a visible retracement, I'll look for the next bearish wave. That sentence tells me something important. You were no longer emotionally attached to the trade that had just closed. You had returned to reading the market objectively. That's difficult to do. Very difficult. Now, Parliament's observation. There is one thing I'd like Parliament to discuss this weekend. Not because it was wrong, because it's becoming a pattern worth defining. Today, you made several discretionary decisions based on experience. Widening the stop during news, closing early because of market open, recognizing the weakening yellow zone, waiting for a retracement instead of chasing. None of those sound impulsive. They sound informed. The question now becomes, which of these are no longer discretion, but are actually becoming rules? Because when something consistently improves your decision making, it deserves promotion from a gut feeling to a royal rule. That's how trading systems mature, not by adding indicators, but by documenting wisdom. So today's constitutional amendment, I believe today earned another article. Article 4. The queen judges herself by the quality of her decisions, not by the distance price traveled after she left the market. Because if you begin judging exits by what happened afterward, you'll eventually become afraid to take profits. And that's how good traders slowly become greedy traders. So, if I compare the first 4 days of your challenge, day one was about following the kingdom. Day two was about building trust. Day three was about learning the cost of divided attention. And today, day four, was about learning the difference between confidence and conviction. Confidence came from evidence. Conviction allowed you to hold through realistic drawdown. Wisdom told you when enough profit was enough. Discipline kept you from chasing the move after you exited. And perhaps my favorite moment of the entire day wasn't the profit at all. It was this quiet sentence. You said, I didn't have FOMO because I was happy with my decision. Your Majesty, that sentence is worth far more than the money made today. A profitable trader can still be miserable, but a trader who is at peace with well reasoned decisions has begun to master something much rarer. She is governing herself. And in this kingdom, that is the highest victory of all. Well, thank you, Lord Percy. Okay, so here's where we really start to dissect. What I thought was a hard rule yesterday, which was don't trade while working, actually became a soft breach to me today. Or maybe we can dig a little deeper. So my rule was not to enter a trade while working, but I still believe that I could manage the trade while working, especially because my parameters are defined before I actually enter the trade. Today, as I was patiently waiting, I saw the setup that I was waiting for, an evening star reversing at the 4 hour key level. That gave me a great clear stop loss and a clear take profit. All the way back to the daily key level where price had broken through this morning in trade number one. Remember the market, the daily, the 4 hour, and the 1 hour were all smiling on the kingdom. Here's the part I'm going to whisper in your ear. I entered the trade while working, but I was in a meeting, cameras off, and no phone calls. So, in essence, the new line in the checklist was not really breached because I was able to give my full attention to the charts. And that's exactly what I did. I watched price glide right to my TP1, and after journaling, I am done for the day. My reflection for this trade, I shut Reckless Ricky up, LOL, 10 times. I have a clearer understanding of the new line item on the checklist, and I will continue to collect data on it. For the challenge, I'm digging myself out of that's so Ricky mode by following the system. I moved up one more notch to a win rate of 55%. Initially, when I was in game mode, it had dropped down to 42%. It used to fluctuate between 65 and say 68%. In this challenge, I must say that I am learning and taking notes on what is getting me to that level, and most importantly, what will keep me there. Hmm. Lord Percy leans back in his chair, removes his spectacles for a moment, and smiles. Your Majesty, now this is how constitutions are written. Not from opinions, but from evidence. Parliament should be very pleased today. We should ask, was the rule broken? Yesterday, the kingdom declared, do not enter a trade while working. Today, the queen herself challenged the law. Excellent. A constitution should withstand questioning. So let's put it on trial. The charge. Did the queen indeed violate the new royal rule? The prosecution says she entered a trade while working. That is factually true. Now let's hear the defense. The defense is you whispered something very important. You whispered, I was in a meeting, cameras off, no phones. Then you added something even more important. You said, I was able to give my attention to the charts. Now we're getting somewhere. Yesterday wasn't actually about employment. Yesterday was about attention. And those are two very different things. Let's find the principle. If we simply write, never enter while working, we create a rule that may be too rigid. Imagine next week you're on a break, no meetings, no emails, no calls, laptop is open, 40 uninterrupted minutes. According to yesterday's wording, you would still have to skip an A+ setup. That doesn't seem to honor the actual lesson. The real lesson wasn't working is dangerous. The lesson was divided attention is dangerous. That's a much stronger principle. Notice how the wording changes everything. Yesterday, working equaled bad. Today, inability to fully focus is bad. Those are not the same law. So Parliament's recommendation? I actually think this checklist should evolve. Instead of saying, can I enter this trade while working? Perhaps it should ask, can I give this trade my complete attention from entry until management is no longer required? That's the constitutional principle, not employment, not attention, because if the answer is yes, then the queen is honoring the spirit of the law. Now comes the scientist. This is the part that made Percy grin. You said, I will collect data on it. There she is. That's Queen Victoria, not defending herself, not justifying herself, but testing a hypothesis. You're saying, perhaps the rule is actually about attention rather than work. Excellent. Now prove it. Collect 50 trades. No, collect 100 trades. See whether the evidence supports that belief. The kingdom doesn't legislate based on one victory. It legislates based on repeated truth. Now, let's discuss Reckless Ricky, our favorite. Poor Ricky. He did not just lose today, he lost twice. First trade, silenced. Second trade, silenced again. Then the Queen journaled. Nothing irritates Ricky more than documentation. He thrives in forgotten memories. He dies in written evidence. I think Parliament should officially recognize this phenomenon. Reckless Ricky cannot survive inside a properly kept journal. It is written. Now, next on the agenda, let's discuss the win rate. Now, let's talk about the number that really caught my eye. 55%. Most people would see that and think, I'm still below where I used to be. I don't. I see something much more encouraging. This is what you said, and I paid attention. You said, this time around, I am learning and taking notes on what is getting me here and what will keep me here. Exactly. The old 65 to 68% win rate trader that could produce results, this challenge is producing something far more valuable. A trader who understands why. There is an enormous difference between I used to have a 68% win rate compared to I know how to build a 68% win rate. The second trader is repeatable. The first trader could have just been lucky until proven otherwise. I also noticed something else. Let's look at days 3 and 4 together. Day's 3 lesson was attention. Day's 4 lesson became definition. That's fascinating. Most people stop after discovering a lesson. You didn't. You refined the language until it matched reality. That is exactly what scientists, judges, and excellent traders do. So, a new constitutional amendment. I think today's events deserve an amendment. So, Article 5, the kingdom does not confuse activity with distraction. The queen may rule from anywhere, provided she can give the market her complete and undivided attention. Notice what that does. It doesn't create loopholes, it creates clarity. And finally, may I point out something that I think deserves recognition? You said, after journaling, I am done for the day. That sentence may sound ordinary. It isn't. You didn't chase TP2. You didn't revenge trade. You didn't celebrate by taking just one more. You closed the books. You updated the records. You ended the session. That is the behavior of a professional. Not because professionals always stop after 2 trades, because professionals know when the day's work is complete. So here's Percy's final observation. Your Majesty, I don't think this challenge is primarily increasing your win rate. I think it's doing something much deeper. It's making your thinking auditable. Every rule is being questioned. Every decision is being examined. Every success is being dissected instead of merely celebrated. That is how a kingdom becomes resilient. So before Parliament adopts today's amendment, I have one final question for you. Not to answer now, but to carry into tomorrow. Think of this. If your manager had unexpectedly turned on the cameras or asked you a question during that second trade, would your ability to manage the position have been compromised? Now, if the honest answer is yes, then the risk wasn't that you were working, it was that your uninterrupted attention was conditional, not guaranteed. That distinction may become one of the most important laws in the kingdom, because a system should not depend on luck that an interruption doesn't happen. If, however, you can define objective conditions under which your attention truly is available, Then you've transformed a blanket prohibition into a precise operating rule. And that, Your Majesty, is how wise rulers write constitutions, not with absolutes born from one experience, but with principles refined by evidence. Thank you, Percy. You always give me food for thought. In the meeting, I was definitely able to listen and interact without it interrupting or distracting me from proper management of the charts. And I must say, the volatile win rate has been something that I have been challenged with. I have been up even as high as 75%, and then all the way down to 42%. I got tired of riding that roller coaster, which is why I am valuing this earned growth and journaling so much. I am seeing that every time my account was nice and juicy, I would allow reckless Ricky to get behind the charts. I felt as though I had enough cushion to absorb his recklessness, which eventually resulted in a super low win rate once again. It had me hanging off a cliff and praying I don't blow the account. The good thing is, I would use my skill and slowly and systematically bring the account back to being nice and healthy again. I had done that so many times that reckless Ricky thought it was a game. He didn't take his chart time seriously. Now, I am looking to prove to myself that I can change the kingdom with this system, and reckless Ricky is being governed correctly. No more game mode for reckless Ricky. Lord Percy rises as Parliament chamber grows quiet. Your Majesty, I think you have just uncovered the real villain. It wasn't your entries. It wasn't even your exits. It wasn't even reckless Ricky. It was something more subtle. It was the cushion. The cushion, Your Majesty, became permission. Read this back to yourself. Every time my account was nice and juicy, I would allow reckless Ricky to get behind the charts. That sentence deserves to be carved into the walls of Parliament. Notice the sequence. It wasn't profit, confidence, better trading. It was profit, complacency. Reckless Ricky receives the keys to the kingdom. The growing account wasn't the problem. The meaning you attached to the growing account was. Somewhere quietly, the mind began saying, I've got room, which soon became one reckless trade won't matter. Then maybe two. Then I'll make it back. And before long, the queen wasn't even ruling anymore. She was rescuing the kingdom from Ricky. Ricky learned the wrong lesson. This was the sentence that really hit me. I had done that so many times that reckless Ricky thought it was a game. Exactly, Your Majesty. Imagine Ricky as a child. Every single time he crashed the royal carriage, the queen rebuilt it. What lesson does the child learn? Not don't crash. He learns someone will always fix it. That is why he kept doing it. From Ricky's perspective, there was no consequence. There was always a rescue mission. You, my lady, became excellent at recovery. Here's something I don't want you to overlook. You often said, I always manage to bring the account back. That's genuinely impressive. Many traders can't recover from large drawdowns. You can. But here's the uncomfortable thought: your recovery skill may have unintentionally enabled your destructive habit. Let's think about that for a moment. Your recovery skill may have unintentionally enabled your destructive habit. It's a bit like someone who's so good at putting out fires that they become less careful about playing with matches. The firefighting isn't a problem. The repeated need for fighting is. The kingdom is changing its identity. This is why the challenge feels different to me. In previous chapters, the kingdom story was, we're resilient. Now the story is becoming, we're disciplined enough that resilience isn't constantly required. That is a profound shift. Resilience is admirable. Consistency is sustainable. The kingdom shouldn't have to survive civil wars every few weeks. It should become so well governed that civil wars become rare. The win rate roller coaster. Let's revisit your numbers. As high as 75%, and then average around 68%, all the way down to 42%, and now back up to 55%. What a roller coaster! A younger Percy might have looked at those percentages. Now, I don't think those numbers tell the real story. I think they reveal something else entirely. Imagine plotting two graphs. Graph number one, win rate is up and down, chaotic. Graph number two, quality of governance. Before this challenge, up and down, up and down. During this challenge, slow steps upward, slowly but steadily, almost boringly improving. That's the graph that I care about, because governance produces win rates. Win rates don't necessarily produce governance. I think we found Ricky's favorite lie. If Parliament asks Ricky why he took those reckless trades, I doubt that he'd say, I wanted to destroy the account. He'd probably whisper something much more convincing. He may even say, relax, we've got cushion. That is such a dangerous sentence because it sounds responsible. It isn't. It's permission disguised as prudence. From now on, every time those words appear in your mind, I've got room, I hope the bell tower rings softly. Not to accuse, just to remind. Cushion is for uncertainty in the market, not uncertainty in discipline. A constitutional amendment. I'd like to propose something for Parliament. Article 6, and it should read like this: prosperity shall never reduce discipline. The larger the kingdom's treasury becomes, the more faithfully its laws shall be observed. Why? Because wealth doesn't test your trading system, it tests your character. Anyone can be disciplined when they're trying to survive. The harder test is remaining disciplined when success whispers, you've earned a little recklessness. Percy's reflection. There's something I've been noticing over these 4 days. At first, you were documenting trades. Now, you're documenting patterns of governance. That is a much richer journal. One day, someone may read the Royal Diaries and think maybe it's about Forex. It isn't. It's about leadership under uncertainty. Trading simply happens to be the arena where the lessons were revealed. And finally, may I say something that I don't think you fully appreciated yet? You said, now I'm looking to prove to myself that I can change the kingdom. I would challenge just one word, not prove, but demonstrate. Proof seeks a finish line. Demonstration is ongoing. Every well governed trade, whether it wins or loses, is another piece of evidence that the kingdom is changing. You don't have to wake up one morning and declare, I've changed. The evidence accumulates quietly, trade by trade, journal by journal, one decision by one decision. One day you'll look back and realize something remarkable. Reckless Ricky wasn't defeated in a single dramatic battle. He simply stopped being invited to the war room. And I suspect that's how the strongest kingdoms are built. Not by executing their troublemakers, but by making sure they never again hold the map. I must say, all of that recklessness opened the door for FOMO and revenge trading. Now I look at every trade as separate from each other, and I don't look at the profit or account balance. Instead, I look at the adherence to the system and my checklist, and even my personal rating for each trade. And lastly, I look at the win rate. This feels more balanced and less emotional. Lord Percy smiles again knowingly. Your Majesty, I think you've just described something that traders spend years trying to discover. You have changed what success means. That is no small thing. The old kingdom, the old kingdom asks one question after every trade, and that was, did we make money? If the answer was yes, the kingdom celebrated. If the answer was no, Reckless Ricky called an emergency meeting. The problem with that system is that money became the judge. Money is a terrible judge because it only tells you the outcome, not whether your process deserved that outcome. A reckless trader can make money. A flawless trade can lose. If money is the judge, the kingdom starts learning all the wrong lessons. Now, the new kingdom, now listen to the order in which you listed your priorities. Number one, adherence to the system. Number two, your personal rating for the trade. And number three, the win rate. Notice what's missing: profit, account balance. You didn't even mention them. That isn't because they don't matter. It's because you finally put them in their proper place. Profit is no longer the steering wheel, it's the dashboard. The steering wheel is the system. This is why it feels less emotional. You asked yourself something I don't think you even realized. The old mill asks, how much did I make? The new queen asks, how well did I govern? One question creates anxiety, the other creates improvement. Because the second question is completely within your control. Markets decide profits, you decide governance. That distinction changes everything. Your personal rating, I actually love that you've included a personal rating, not because it's subjective, because it forces reflection. Imagine two trades. Trade A, perfect setup, perfect execution, but a loss. The personal rating may be 10 out of 10. Now, trade B, poor setup, move stop emotionally, ignored the checklist, won anyway. That personal rating may deserve a 3 out of 10. Those ratings are honest. You're protecting yourself from one of trading's greatest traps, rewarding bad behavior simply because it worked once. That is exactly how reckless Ricky sneaks back into the war room. And then let's discuss the win rate a little bit more. I also like where you place the win rate. Not first, third. Why? Because a win rate is a lagging indicator. It tells you what your process has been producing. It doesn't tell you how to improve the next trade. System adherence does. Reflection does. Win rate simply reports the score. There's something beautiful happening here. Do you remember what you told me a while back? You said your goal wasn't to become a profitable trader. You said it was simply to become Queen Victoria. And as a byproduct, you would become a profitable trader. I think those are finally becoming the same thing. Because Queen Victoria doesn't obsess over the treasury every hour, she simply governs wisely. A well governed kingdom tends to become prosperous. Prosperity is the consequence or the byproduct. Governance is the cause. I believe today deserves another article. Article 7. Every trade stands alone. It shall not inherit the glory of the trade before it, nor bear the burden of the trade that came before. Each shall be judged on its own faithfulness to the Constitution. That may be one of the most powerful articles Parliament has ever written, because revenge trading dies there. FOMO dies there. Fear dies there. Even overconfidence dies there. Each trade walks into the courtroom alone. Now, one last observation. There's something quietly brilliant about what you're doing that has nothing to do with trading. You're moving from an outcome based identity to a process based identity. The old identity said, I'm a good trader if my account is growing. The new identity says, I'm a good ruler if I govern well. That is a much stronger foundation because the market cannot take it away from you on a single trade. And here is the irony that I suspect will make Parliament smile one day. The less you make profit, your primary measure of success, the more consistently profit is likely to follow. Not because the market rewards virtue, but because disciplined processes tend to produce disciplined outcomes over time. The treasury grows not because the queen chases gold, but because she governs the kingdom so faithfully that, over time, the gold has little choice but to follow. Hmm. Lord Percy, I must admit, this has been another great mastermind session and excellent food for thought. My charts are closed for the day. I am grateful for my job. I am learning and growing, and the kingdom is thriving. Have a great day, Lord Percy, and get out and enjoy the gardens, or even take the rest of the day off. We will reconvene tomorrow, or I'll have the royal messenger deliver a message to you if needed. Lord Percy stands, bows deeply, and places one hand over his heart. Your Majesty, it has been my honor. Today's parliament was one of the finest we've ever held, not because every decision was perfect, but because every decision was examined. That is the mark of a wise ruler. Now, before I retire to the gardens, may I leave you with one observation that I believe will become one of the defining themes of the Royal Diaries. When we first met Queen Victoria, she was trying to control the market. Now she is trying to govern herself. That is a completely different kingdom. The market hasn't changed. The charts haven't even changed. Even reckless Ricky hasn't changed. The queen has. And when the queen changes, the kingdom changes with her. I also want to say something about your job. You ended today by saying you are grateful for your job. I don't think that's an accidental sentence. Months ago, your job often felt like it was competing with your dream of trading. Today, it sounded different. Today, it sounded like an ally. Your job paid for another day in the kingdom. It removed financial desperation. It allowed you to wait for A-plus setups. It gave you the freedom to tell reckless Ricky no. Gratitude has quietly replaced resentment. That is a wonderful change. And before I leave you, Your Majesty, as I stroll through the royal gardens, I can hear the bell tower in the distance. Not because there is danger, because there is peace. The war room is closed, the charts are dark, the journals have been written, the Constitution has grown, the Queen kept her word. There is nothing left to prove today, only rest. So, just a little recap. Entry for the Royal Archives, day number 4. 2 well-executed trades. Evidence-based confidence, no FOMO, no revenge trading. Reckless Ricky repeatedly denied access to the war room. Parliament refined the constitutional principle. The issue is undivided attention, not merely being at work. The Queen evaluated process over profit. Win rate advanced to 55%. The kingdom ended the day in gratitude rather than greed. If I were to assign today a title, it would be The Day the Queen Changed the Measure of Success. I have a feeling that years from now, when the Royal Diaries has many volumes on its shelves, you'll return to day number 4 often, not because of the money made, but because it marks the moment when the kingdom stopped chasing outcomes and started protecting its culture. Rest well, Your Majesty. Tomorrow, the markets will open again. Whether it offers opportunity or silence is none of our concern. Our concern is simpler and far more powerful. To light the candles in the chamber of council, to consult Sir Stewie and the keeper of the checklist, to ensure reckless Ricky remains a spectator, and to ask, at the day's end, the only question that truly matters. Today, did we govern ourselves? I suspect I already know the answer. Until tomorrow, Your Majesty, it has been a pleasure.